In a small, quiet town where everyone seemed to know each other's business, there lived a boy named Marcus. He was an 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School, a place filled with kids who were loud, energetic, and always eager to share stories about their families. Marcus, however, was different. He wasn't the type to raise his hand in class or join in on conversations unless someone directly asked him something. He preferred to listen rather than speak, and most of the time he kept to himself. But that didn't mean Marcus wasn't noticed. His teachers often remarked how polite and respectful he was, even though he rarely stood out in a crowd. Marcus came from a close-knit family. His mother worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and his father, Derek, had one of the toughest jobs in town. He was a firefighter. Growing up, Marcus had always admired his dad. To him, Derek wasn't just a parent, he was a hero. Every time Derek left for work, Marcus would watch him go, wondering what kind of challenges he might face that day. And every time Derek came home covered in soot, tired but smiling, Marcus felt immense pride. His dad saved lives. That was something special, something worth celebrating, but not everyone saw it that way. At school, kids loved talking about their parents' jobs. Some bragged about having doctors or lawyers for parents, while others boasted about their moms and dads owning big businesses or working in fancy offices. When it came to Marcus, though, things were different. No one ever talked about firefighters, much. It wasn't glamorous like being a lawyer or exciting like being a pilot. Firefighting was hard, dangerous work, and people didn't always appreciate it the way they should have. One crisp Monday morning, during Mr. Thompson's social studies class, the topic turned to careers. "All right, class," Mr. Thompson said, leaning against his desk with a smirk. "Let's take a break from history today and talk about something more personal. What do your parents do for a living? Who wants to go first?" Hands shot up all over the room. One boy shouted, "My dad's a doctor." Another girl chimed in, "My mom owns a bakery downtown." Everyone wanted to share, their voices overlapping in excitement. Marcus sat quietly in the back row, listening to the chatter around him. He didn't feel the need to compete. After all, his dad's job was important too, right? Still, he couldn't help feeling a little uneasy when Mr. Thompson's gaze landed on him. "Marcus," the teacher called out, pointing at him. "How about you? What does your dad do?" For a moment, Marcus hesitated. He could feel all eyes on him, waiting for his answer. Then, taking a deep breath, he spoke softly but clearly. "My dad is a firefighter." The room fell silent. For a split second, it seemed like everyone was processing what Marcus had said. But then, Mr. Thompson chuckled. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was sharp, almost mocking. "Oh, really?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "A firefighter, huh? That must be tough work. Are you sure your dad isn't just washing trucks or something?" A few students giggled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between Marcus and Mr. Thompson. Marcus felt his face grow hot. He stared down at his desk, clutching his pencil tightly. His chest tightened, and his throat felt dry. He wanted to say something, to defend his dad, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he stayed silent, letting the weight of Mr. Thompson's comment settle over him like a heavy blanket. When class ended, Marcus hurried out of the room without looking back. As he walked through the hallways, he replayed the moment in his mind. Why had Mr. Thompson said that? Did he really think being a firefighter wasn't important? Marcus knew better. He had seen his dad risk his life countless times to save others. He had heard stories about burning buildings, trapped families, and daring rescues. How could anyone dismiss that? At lunch, Marcus sat alone at a corner table, picking at his food. A few classmates tried to approach him, but he shrugged them off. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want anyone's pity. All he wanted was to forget what had happened. But no matter how hard he tried, the memory lingered. Mr. Thompson's words echoed in his mind, louder and sharper each time. By the end of the day, Marcus felt drained. Walking home, he thought about telling his mom or dad about what had happened. But as he pictured their faces, he stopped himself. They didn't need this kind of stress. His dad worked long hours already. risking his life every day. The last thing Marcus wanted was to burden him with something as trivial as a teacher's cruel joke. So instead, he decided to keep it to himself. That night, as Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he made a promise to himself. No matter what anyone said, he wouldn't let them make him doubt his dad or himself. Derek was a hero, plain and simple. And someday Marcus hoped everyone else would see it too. But deep down he wondered if that day would ever come. The next morning, Marcus woke up with a heavy heart. He had hoped that sleeping would erase the sting of Mr. Thompson's words, but instead, they clung to him like a shadow. As he got ready for school, he tried to convince himself that it didn't matter. What Mr. Thompson thought or said wasn't important. His dad was still a hero no matter what anyone believed. But no matter how hard he tried to push those thoughts away, they kept creeping back in. At breakfast, Marcus barely touched his cereal. His mom, noticing his silence, asked gently, "Is everything okay, sweetheart? You seem quiet today." Marcus forced a smile and shrugged. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." His mom studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she could sense something was off. But before she could press further, Marcus stood up, grabbed his backpack, and headed out the door. He couldn't risk telling her about what happened. She worked long shifts at the hospital, and the last thing he wanted was to add to her worries. As he walked to school, Marcus replayed the scene from yesterday in his mind. Mr. Thompson's smirk, the awkward laughter of his classmates, it all felt so vivid as if it had just happened again. What made it worse was that some of those kids had started whispering behind his back. During math class earlier that week, Marcus had overheard two boys talking about him. "Do you think his dad really is a firefighter?" one of them had asked. Or was he just making it up? Marcus hadn't stuck around to hear the rest. He'd turned away quickly, pretending not to notice. But now, as he sat alone on the bus, those words replayed in his head. Was that what everyone thought? That he was lying? That his dad wasn't good enough? When Marcus arrived at school, things only got worse. Some kids avoided him altogether, unsure how to act around someone who seemed so embarrassed. Others gave him sympathetic looks which made him feel even smaller. Even teachers treated him differently. Mrs. Lewis, his science teacher, patted him on the shoulder during class and said, "Don't let anyone bring you down, Marcus." Though she meant well, her words only reminded him of how exposed he felt. By lunchtime, Marcus was exhausted. He found himself sitting at the same corner table where he'd eaten alone the day before. This time, though, he wasn't completely by himself. A girl named Emily, who usually sat with her friends, approached him hesitantly. "Hey, Marcus," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. "Are you okay?" Marcus looked up, surprised. Emily wasn't someone he talked to much, but she seemed genuinely concerned. "Yeah, I'm fine," he muttered, poking at his sandwich. Emily frowned. "You don't look fine. Did something happen? People have been saying stuff." Marcus sighed. He didn't want to talk about it, but maybe sharing his feelings would make the weight on his chest feel lighter. Slowly, he told Emily about what Mr. Thompson had said in class. When he finished, Emily shook her head angrily. "That's ridiculous," she exclaimed. "Your dad's job is amazing. Firefighters save lives every single day. They're real heroes." Her words brought a small smile to Marcus's face, but it faded quickly. "I know that," he said quietly. "But not everyone sees it that way." Emily reached across the table and placed a hand on his arm. "Don't listen to them, Marcus. Anyone who thinks less of your dad because of his job is wrong. And anyone who makes fun of you for being proud of him is just jealous." For the first time since the incident, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe he shouldn't let Mr. Thompson's words define how he felt about himself, or his dad. Still, it wasn't easy. Every time he passed Mr. Thompson, in the hallway he could feel the teacher's gaze lingering on him. It wasn't mocking anymore, but it was uncomfortable all the same. At home that evening, Marcus tried to focus on happier things. His dad, Derek, came home early from work, which was rare. He greeted Marcus with a wide grin and ruffled his hair. "How was school today, champ?" he asked. sitting down at the kitchen table. Marcus hesitated. For a moment he considered, telling his dad everything. The teasing, the whispers, the way Mr. Thompson had mocked him. But then he remembered how tired Derek always looked after a long shift. How could he burden his dad with this? Instead, he shrugged and said, "It was okay." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Just okay? Come on, there must have been something exciting. Did you learn anything cool in science or did you ace another test?" Marcus managed a weak laugh. "Not really, just normal stuff." Derek nodded, accepting the answer without pressing further. Then he launched into a story about his day at the fire station. "We had a call this afternoon," he began, his voice filled with energy. "There was a house fire downtown, smoke everywhere, flames climbing up the walls, but we got everyone out safely. 2 kids and their mom. They were scared, but they're okay now." As Derek spoke, Marcus listened intently. He loved hearing these stories, even though they sometimes made his stomach churn with worry. His dad always sounded so calm, so confident when he talked about his job. To Derek, firefighting wasn't just a career, it was a calling. He lived for the moments when he could help people, when he could make a difference. But tonight, as Marcus watched his dad recount the rescue mission, he couldn't help wondering if anyone else saw Derek the way he did. Did they understand how brave he was? How selfless? Or did they only care about jobs that paid more money or came with fancy titles? Later that night, as Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about all the times his dad had taught him important lessons. One of them stood out clearly. Stay calm in emergencies. Think clearly. Derek had repeated those words countless times, especially during community safety events where he demonstrated how to use fire extinguishers or escape burning buildings. At the time, Marcus had listened carefully, eager to learn. Now he realized that his dad's advice applied to more than just physical dangers. It applied to life, too. The next day at school, Marcus decided to try taking his own advice. When classmates whispered or stared, he ignored them. When Mr. Thompson glanced at him during class, he met the teacher's gaze steadily, refusing to look away. It wasn't easy. His stomach churned with nerves every time, but slowly he began to feel stronger. He reminded himself that his worth wasn't determined by what others thought. His dad was a hero, and nothing, not even cruel words, could change that. Still, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was waiting just around the corner. Something that would force everyone to see the truth. Little did he know, that moment was closer than he imagined. The days that followed were a blur for Marcus. He tried to focus on his schoolwork, but it was hard when whispers and sideways glances seemed to follow him everywhere. Even though he had decided to ignore them, the weight of Mr. Thompson's words still lingered in the back of his mind. Every time someone mentioned firefighters or emergencies, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if they were secretly laughing at him. Still, he held on to the lessons his dad had taught him. Stay calm, think clearly, and promised himself not to let negativity win. It was a chilly Tuesday morning when everything changed. The air outside was crisp, and the sky was overcast with gray clouds. As usual, Marcus walked into Lincoln Middle School carrying his backpack, keeping his head down as he made his way to his locker. He wasn't paying much attention to anything around him. His thoughts were focused on finishing an essay due later that day. But then, something unusual caught his nose. A faint smell, sharp and acrid, like burning plastic. At first, Marcus thought nothing of it. Maybe someone had left food in the microwave too long in the cafeteria kitchen. It wouldn't be the first time that happened. Shrugging it off, he opened his locker and started pulling out his books. But just as he slammed the door shut, a scream echoed through the hallway. "Fire! There's smoke!" Panic erupted instantly. Students froze mid-step, their eyes wide with fear. Then, chaos broke loose. Kids began running in every direction, shouting and shoving each other as they scrambled toward the exits. Teachers appeared in doorways, yelling instructions and trying to maintain order. "Stay calm," one shouted. "Line up single file." "Don't push." Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. The smell of smoke grew stronger, and he could see wisps of it curling along the ceiling tiles. His mind raced. What should he do? Should he run with the crowd? Or was there something else he needed to focus on? Then, he remembered his dad's voice echoing in his ears. Stay calm in emergencies, think clearly. Taking a deep breath, Marcus forced himself to move. He followed the flow of students heading toward the nearest exit. But as he passed the science lab, he noticed something alarming. Thick, black smoke pouring out from underneath the door. Someone inside cried for help. It was muffled, desperate. A janitor must have been trapped inside. Without thinking twice, Marcus stopped in his tracks. His instincts kicked in. He glanced around and spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall nearby. His hands trembled as he approached it, but he remembered watching his dad demonstrate how to use one during a community safety event last summer. Breaking open the glass case, Marcus pulled the pin and aimed the nozzle at the base of the flames, seeping under the door. The extinguisher sputtered at first, sending out weak bursts of white foam. Marcus adjusted his grip and pressed harder, determined to make it work. Slowly, the flames weakened enough for him to push the door open. Coughing and squinting through the haze, he stepped inside. The scene inside was chaotic. Smoke filled the room, stinging his eyes and making it hard to breathe. Through the thick fog, Marcus spotted the janitor slumped against the wall, unconscious. Flames licked at the edges of the desks and cabinets, threatening to spread further. Marcus knew he didn't have much time. Summoning all his strength, Marcus grabbed the janitor by the arms and began dragging him toward the door. The man was heavier than Marcus expected, and his legs scraped awkwardly across the floor. Each step felt like an eternity, but Marcus refused to give up. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he managed to pull the janitor out into the fresh air. By the time emergency services arrived, the situation was mostly under control. Fire trucks screeched to a halt outside the school, their sirens blaring. Firefighters leaped out, rushing toward the building with hoses and equipment. Marcus collapsed onto the grass, coughing violently and wiping ash from his face. His hands were shaking and his clothes were covered in soot, but he felt a strange sense of relief. He had done what he could. As the firefighters worked to contain the blaze, one of them caught sight of Marcus sitting on the ground. His eyes widened in shock. "Marcus!" he called out, hurrying over. "What are you doing here?" It was Derek, Marcus's dad. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Derek knelt beside his son, pulling him into a tight hug. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling with concern. "What happened?" "I helped," Marcus replied simply, his voice hoarse from coughing. "I did what you taught me." Derek stared at him, his expression a mix of pride and disbelief. Then, without another word, he hugged Marcus even tighter. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he realized just how close he had come to danger. But he also felt a surge of pride. He had acted like a true hero, just like his dad. Around them, the scene was chaotic but hopeful. Paramedics tended to the injured janitor, who was beginning to regain consciousness. Teachers gathered groups of students, ensuring everyone was accounted for. Parents arrived, frantic and worried, hugging their children tightly. Amidst the commotion, Marcus sat quietly with his dad, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. For the first time in days, Marcus didn't feel small or invisible. Instead, he felt powerful. He had faced his fears and risen to the occasion, proving to himself and to everyone else that bravery wasn't about seeking glory. It was about doing what was right even when it was hard. And as he looked up at his dad, Marcus knew that he carried a legacy of courage, one that would inspire him for the rest of his life. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where people would finally see the truth, not just about firefighters, but about the boy who had risked everything to save a stranger. The aftermath of the fire was a whirlwind of activity. Sirens wailed in the distance as firefighters worked tirelessly to put out the last remnants of the blaze. Smoke still lingered in the air, and the once familiar hallways of Lincoln Middle School now looked like something out of a disaster movie. Charred walls, broken windows, and debris scattered everywhere. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of relief. Everyone had made it out safely, thanks in large part to Marcus's quick thinking. As the crowd gathered on the school lawn, whispers began to spread. At first, no one knew exactly what had happened inside the building. All they saw was Marcus emerging from the smoke, dragging the unconscious janitor behind him. Some students gasped in shock, others stared in awe. Teachers rushed to check on both Marcus and the janitor, ensuring they were okay. Paramedics quickly took over, giving the janitor oxygen and tending to his injuries. Meanwhile, Marcus sat, quietly on the grass covered in soot and ash, trying to catch his breath. Derek stayed by his son's side, his arm protectively around Marcus's shoulders. "You're a hero," Derek said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Marcus didn't respond right away. He was still processing everything that had just happened. His mind kept replaying the moments when he had pushed open the door to the science lab, when he had pulled the heavy extinguisher off the wall, when he had dragged the janitor to safety. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie rather than real life. Yet here he was, sitting in the middle of a scene that proved it wasn't fiction, it was reality. Word of Marcus's bravery spread quickly. By the time Principal Anderson arrived on the scene, many students and teachers were already talking about what Marcus had done. The principal approached Marcus and Derek, his face pale but filled with gratitude. "Marcus," he said, kneeling down to meet the boy's eyes. "You saved someone's life today. That takes incredible courage. We're all so grateful for what you did." Marcus nodded shyly, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not like this. But as more people came up to thank him, teachers, classmates, even strangers, he couldn't help but feel a strange mix of pride and disbelief. Was this really happening? Him? Marcus? The same kid who had been mocked just days earlier? Later, that afternoon, after the fire was fully extinguished and the authorities had finished their initial investigation, the school dismissed everyone early. Parents picked up their children, hugging them tightly and expressing relief that they were safe. For Marcus, the ride home with his mom and dad was unusually quiet. Both of his parents kept glancing at him, their expressions a mixture of worry and admiration. They wanted to ask questions to understand exactly what had happened, but they could tell Marcus was exhausted. That evening, the local news station aired a report about the fire. Footage showed the damaged school exterior, interviews with shaken students and staff, and clips of firefighters battling the flames. Toward the end of the segment, the reporter introduced Marcus as the student who had risked his life to save the janitor. The camera panned to him standing alongside his dad, both looking tired but resolute. When asked how he had managed to stay calm during such a dangerous situation, Marcus replied simply, "My dad taught me to think clearly in emergencies. I just did what he would have done." The interview went viral almost immediately. Social media platforms lit up with praise for Marcus and his dad. Comments poured in from people across the country, calling them heroes and thanking them for their bravery. Even celebrities joined in, sharing posts about the importance of recognizing everyday heroes like firefighters and their families. Overnight, Marcus became a symbol of courage and resilience. But the biggest surprise came the next morning at school. As Marcus walked through the gates, he noticed something different. Students who had once teased him or avoided him altogether now greeted him warmly. Some even clapped as he passed by. Teachers smiled at him with newfound respect, and even Mr. Thompson seemed hesitant to make eye contact. It was clear that the fire and Marcus's actions had changed the way people viewed him. During homeroom, Principal Anderson made an announcement over the intercom. "Good morning, students," he began. "As many of you know, we experienced a frightening incident yesterday. Thanks to the efforts of our brave firefighters and one very special student, everyone is safe. Today, I want to take a moment to recognize Marcus Johnson for his extraordinary act of heroism. What he did was nothing short of remarkable, and we are incredibly proud to have him as part of our school community." The entire building erupted into applause. Marcus sat awkward, past. The applause in the classroom felt like a tidal wave crashing over Marcus. He sank lower into his seat, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. Despite the praise, he wasn't comfortable being the center of attention. All his life, he had preferred to stay in the background, unnoticed and unbothered. But now everyone was looking at him, cheering for him, clapping as if he were some kind of celebrity. It was overwhelming. Principal Anderson's voice echoed through the intercom again, cutting through the noise. "Marcus, please come to the office after first period. We'd like to discuss how we can properly honor your bravery." The announcement ended with another round of applause, leaving Marcus feeling even more uneasy. As the day went on, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the way people treated him. Classmates who had once whispered behind his back now approached him between classes, eager to talk to him. Some thanked him for saving the janitor, others simply complimented his courage. Even teachers who had previously overlooked him greeted him warmly in the hallways. For the first time, Marcus felt seen, not just as a quiet boy in the corner, but as someone who mattered. But the most surprising change came from Mr. Thompson. After second period, Marcus found himself face to face with the teacher who had mocked him just days earlier. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something that looked like guilt. Finally, clearing his throat, he said, "Marcus, can I speak with you for a moment?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't trust Mr. Thompson, not after what had happened, but curiosity got the better of him. Nodding slightly, he followed the teacher into an empty classroom. Once inside, Mr. Thompson closed the door and turned to face Marcus. His expression was serious, almost pained. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "What I said about your dad, it was wrong. I made assumptions based on ignorance, and I couldn't have been more mistaken. You proved me wrong yesterday, Marcus. What you did, it took real bravery, and I'm sorry for doubting you or your family." For a moment, Marcus didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to lash out, to tell Mr. Thompson exactly how much his words had hurt. But looking into the teacher's eyes, he saw genuine remorse. Slowly, Marcus nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I appreciate the apology." "Mr. Thompson sighed, visibly relieved. "You're an incredible young man, Marcus. I hope you know that. If there's anything I can do to make things right, please let me know." With that, the conversation ended. As Marcus walked away, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The apology didn't erase everything that had happened, but it was a start. For the first time since the incident, Marcus felt like he could truly move forward. Later that afternoon, Principal Anderson called a school-wide assembly in the gymnasium. Students filed in quietly, their eyes scanning the stage where Marcus stood alongside Derek, his dad. Cameras flashed as reporters captured the moment, documenting the story of a boy who had risen above adversity to become a hero. When Principal Anderson stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. "Today, we gather to celebrate not just one individual, but the spirit of courage and selflessness that defines our community," he began. Marcus Johnson demonstrated extraordinary bravery during a time of crisis. He put himself in harm's way to save another person's life, a decision that reminds us all of the power of kindness and quick thinking. The principal paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "But Marcus isn't alone in this journey. Behind every hero is a support system, a foundation of love and guidance. Today, we also honor Derek Johnson, a dedicated firefighter whose years of service inspire us all. Together, they remind us that true heroes are those who step up when it matters most." Derek stepped forward then, shaking hands with Principal Anderson before addressing the crowd. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. "I'm proud of my son, not because he saved someone's life, but because he stayed calm under pressure and did the right thing. That's what being a hero is all about, and I want to thank each of you for recognizing the importance of jobs like firefighting. It's not glamorous work, but it's necessary. Every day, firefighters, nurses, teachers, and countless others give their all to keep our communities safe. So today, let's remember to appreciate them and to encourage the next generation of helpers." When Derek finished speaking, the audience erupted into applause once more. Marcus stood beside his dad, tears welling up in his eyes. For so long, he had doubted whether anyone would ever see his dad the way he did, as a hero. Now, standing in front of hundreds of people who cheered for both of them, Marcus realized that his dad's sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed after all. After the assembly, life at Lincoln Middle School began to feel different, for Marcus and for everyone else. Kids who had once teased him apologized sincerely, promising to treat him with respect moving forward. Teachers encouraged Marcus to take on leadership roles, inviting him to join student council and participate in community service projects. Even Mr. Thompson became a mentor figure, offering guidance and support whenever Marcus needed it. At home, Marcus's family celebrated his newfound confidence. His mom baked his favorite dessert, chocolate cake, while Derek shared stories of past rescues, laughing and joking with Marcus like old times. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt truly happy. He had faced his fears, proven his worth, and earned the respect of those around him. But perhaps the greatest change was within Marcus himself. He no longer cared about what others thought of him or of his dad. He knew the truth, that Derek was a hero, and so was he. Together they carried a legacy of courage, one that would inspire others for years to come. As Marcus lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything that had happened. From the mocking comments in class to the fire that changed everything, it had been a journey, one filled with pain, growth, and ultimately redemption. And though he didn't know what the future held, he was ready to face it head-on, knowing that he had already proven himself capable of greatness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Marcus wasn't afraid. After all, he had learned the most important lesson of all. Heroes aren't born, they're made. And sometimes all it takes is one brave decision to change the world. In the weeks that followed the fire, Marcus's life transformed in ways he never could have imagined. The once quiet boy who preferred to blend into the background was now a symbol of bravery and resilience. People smiled at him in the hallways, greeted him warmly, and even asked for advice on how to handle emergencies. Teachers praised him openly during class, using his actions as an example of courage and quick thinking. For Marcus, it was strange but also empowering to realize that his choices had made such a big impact. At home, things were different too. Derek, Marcus's dad, became something of a local celebrity. The news coverage of the fire had highlighted not only Marcus's heroism, but also Derek's years of dedication as a firefighter. Neighbors stopped him on the street to thank him for his service. Local businesses offered discounts to firefighters and their families, inspired by the Johnson story. Even the mayor invited Derek to speak at a community event honoring first responders. For Marcus, seeing his dad receive recognition felt like justice. All those years of watching Derek work long hours, risk his life, and come home exhausted, it all seemed worth it now. People finally understood just how important firefighting was. They saw the sacrifices Derek made every day to keep others safe. And Marcus couldn't help but feel proud, not just of his dad, but of himself for standing up and proving what they were capable of. One evening, as the family sat together at dinner, Derek raised his glass of water in a toast. "To Marcus," he said with a grin. "My son, my hero, you've shown everyone what it means to be brave." Marcus blushed, ducking his head to hide his smile. "I just did what anyone would have done," he mumbled modestly. "No, you didn't," his mom interjected gently. "You did what most people wouldn't. That's why we're so proud of you." The words warmed Marcus's heart. He had spent so much time doubting himself, wondering if he was good enough or if his dad's job mattered to anyone else. Now, surrounded by love and admiration, he realized that none of that doubt mattered anymore. What mattered was the truth, that heroes came in many forms, and sometimes the quietest voices spoke the loudest. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus noticed subtle changes within himself. He wasn't as shy as he used to be. When classmates asked him questions about the fire, he answered confidently, sharing his experience without hesitation. During group projects, he took charge, offering ideas and leading discussions. Teachers encouraged him to join leadership programs, and before long, Marcus found himself running for student council president. It was a role he never thought he'd consider, let alone pursue, but here he was, stepping out of his comfort zone and embracing new opportunities. Even Mr. Thompson continued to play a surprising role in Marcus's journey. After apologizing, the teacher went out of his way to support Marcus. He nominated him for awards, recommended him for advanced classes, and even helped him prepare speeches for school events. Though their relationship still carried traces of awkwardness, Marcus appreciated the effort. It showed that people could change if they were willing to admit their mistakes and make amends. At one point, Marcus asked Mr. Thompson why he had mocked him in the first place. The teacher sighed deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. Honestly, Marcus, I don't have a good excuse. I think I underestimated your dad because I didn't fully understand what firefighters do. I let stereotypes cloud my judgment, and that was wrong. But seeing you act so bravely, it reminded me of the importance of looking beyond appearances. You taught me a valuable lesson. Marcus nodded, accepting the explanation. Forgiveness wasn't always easy, but holding on to anger wouldn't help anyone. By choosing to forgive, Marcus felt lighter, freer. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future, and that was exactly what he planned to do. By the end of the school year, Marcus's transformation was undeniable. Not only had he become more confident, but he had also inspired others to step up and make a difference. His classmates began volunteering at community centers, organizing fundraisers for local charities, and participating in safety drills. Even teachers remarked on the positive shift in the school's atmosphere. Where there had once been division and judgment, there was now unity and respect. On the last day of school, Principal Anderson announced a special honor for Marcus. Standing in front of the entire student body, he presented Marcus with a plaque commemorating his bravery. "This award is more than just a token of appreciation," the principal said. "It's a reminder that each of us has the power to create change. Marcus showed us what it means to lead with courage and compassion. May we all strive to follow his example." As Marcus accepted the plaque, applause erupted throughout the auditorium. This time, instead of shrinking away, Marcus stood tall, smiling proudly. He glanced over at Derek, who was wiping tears from his eyes, and then at his mom, who was beaming with pride. In that moment, Marcus realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about the legacy he carried. His dad's hard work, his family's values, and his own determination had created something bigger than himself. That summer, Marcus decided to take his newfound confidence a step further. With Derek's encouragement, he signed up for a junior firefighter training program. It was challenging work, learning how to use equipment, practicing rescue techniques, and studying fire science. But Marcus loved every minute of it. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. The other kids in the program respected him, not because of his fame, but because of his dedication and willingness to learn. Derek often joined them during practice sessions, teaching lessons and sharing stories from his own experiences. Watching his dad in action, Marcus understood why firefighting meant so much to him. It wasn't just about putting out fires. It was about protecting lives, building trust, and making a difference. Each day, Marcus grew closer to his goal of becoming a firefighter like his dad, and maybe even surpassing him someday. When the program ended, Marcus received a certificate of completion. As he held it in his hands, he thought about how far he had come. From the boy who had doubted himself after being mocked by a teacher, to the teenager who had saved a life and earned the respect of an entire community, Marcus's journey had been anything but ordinary. But through it all, he had learned one thing above everything else. Bravery wasn't about seeking glory or proving others wrong. It was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. Years later, when Marcus graduated high school and enrolled in a firefighting academy, he looked back on that fateful day at Lincoln Middle School with gratitude. It had been a turning point, not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed his actions. The fire had destroyed part of the school, but it had ignited something far greater, a belief in the power of courage, kindness, and resilience. And as Marcus stood alongside his dad at the fire station, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, He knew one thing for certain. Heroes weren't born, they were made, and he was proud to carry on the legacy of courage that his dad had started.